Hello everyone. In this video, I present to your attention a game by David Janowski, one of the strongest chess players in the world at the end of the 19th century. Almost all the pieces will be sacrificed, 2 rooks, a knight, and the queen. Janowski was a player of an extremely sharp attacking style. He attacked literally in any position. In this game, he is playing against an unknown opponent. However, judging by the level of play in the game, one can clearly say that this was not a beginner at all, but rather a very strong amateur. Janowski plays with the white pieces, and he gives the black side a handicap of 1 knight from b1. e4 begins the game. Janowski opens with the king's pawn. e5 is the reply from black, and then f4, the king's gambit. It's clear, Janowski will fight for the initiative as much as possible. Material is not important to him. The main thing is to checkmate the black king. Black accepts the pawn sacrifice from white, and he develops his knight to f3. g5. This move strengthens the pawn on f4, and also allows black in the future to chase away the white knight from the excellent square f3 with the move g4. Bishop c4. The light-squared bishop comes out to the most active position, aiming at the pawn on f7. Black continues his pawn storm. Black's pawns look quite menacing on the king side. Where will the white knight go? It is attacked, but the knight doesn't move anywhere. The first piece is sacrificed, the knight on f3. White simply castles, hiding his king. Black eagerly captures the white knight, and the white queen joins the game on f3. As a result of the opening, Janowski gets the strongest initiative. Having sacrificed a pawn, he developed 3 of his pieces, also hid his king on the king side, and created pressure along the f-file against black's weak pawn on f7. Yes, he paid a fairly high price with his knight on f3. He has only 2 minor pieces left, 2 bishops. Black, however, hasn't developed a single piece yet. All of them stand on the 8th rank, and the king is not in the most pleasant situation. If an inexperienced player were handling the black pieces, he would clearly be checkmated in about 5 moves, at best. But black plays queen f6, the best move, bringing his strongest piece into the fight, and also defending the pawn on f4, not allowing white to open the f-file. The point is that now this pawn cannot be taken, otherwise a queen exchange would follow. And in this position, of course, Janowski is missing 2 minor pieces, 2 knights. Without queens, he would not be able to create a real mating attack. There are simply too many pieces left for black. The position would be lost. Of course, Janowski does not take the pawn on f4, but first plays e5, thus sacrificing yet another pawn. This is an extremely important move. He is trying to drive away the queen from the defense of the pawn on f4, and after the capture, to place it in an uncomfortable position in the center. If black decided not to take this pawn, then Janowski could easily seize the center with his pawns, for example by playing d4, and would obtain a magnificent pawn center. So black captures this pawn on e5. The queen, of course, is not in the most favorable position. d3 from Janowski. He continues increasing the pressure on the pawn on f4, intending to take it with the bishop. Therefore, bishop a6 from black. He still reinforces the pawn on f4. And bishop d2. Janowski takes advantage of the poor placement of the queen in the center, standing directly in front of the king. And behind him, there's also still a rook on h8. The next move Janowski threatens is rook a to e8, pinning the queen on e5 to the king on e8, and also bringing out the bishop to c3. With such skewering of the queen and the rook on h8, black finds the strongest move, knight e7, pairing both of these threats at once. Because after bringing in the rook, the queen can retreat, while the knight on e7 will still be protected by both the king and the queen from c5. And after the move bishop c3, as indeed followed in the game, it seems black is left without material. The move queen c5 follows, first giving a check. The white king retreats to h1, and black manages to save his rook from h8. Janowski does not succeed in capturing it. Black castles kingside, thus removing his rook from danger. Janowski brings up the last inactive piece, rook to e1. All of his pieces stand on active positions and are ready to attack. The material advantage for black remains. He still has 2 extra knights, but his queen side is still in hibernation. For Janowski to win this game, he must urgently, within the next 10 moves, deliver checkmate to the black king. Otherwise, the black pieces on the queen side will wake up, and then his pieces, clearly, will have nothing to do. And so black plays d5. Blocking the action of the light-squared bishop and attacking it. At first glance, it may seem that Janowski's initiative has come to an end, because now, after the bishop retreats, for example, black can even push d4, and the black pawns will perfectly restrain the white pieces. If the bishop retreats to d2, nothing serious will threaten the black king here. It turns out that after the move d5, retreating the bishop is not an option at all, and David finds the strongest move in this position. He goes forward, not backward, but forward, counterattacking the bishop on h6. Also, now taking on c4 is simply impossible, because then the queen on c5 would be hanging. The bishop on h6 is under attack. And later, together with the dark squared bishop of white, mate on g7 will be threatened. But black finds quite an interesting move. He plays f6, first of all cutting off the action of the dark squared bishop. And if Janowski had taken the bishop on h6, which he did not do in the game, there would have followed such an interesting move, knight f5, activating his knight, also attacking the white queen, and on the capture with the queen on f4, black would finally eat one of white's bishops and have good chances to survive. The white attack would stall. In the game, after the move f6, Janowski does not take the bishop. He foresaw this line, and therefore he destroys the knight on e7, sacrificing his rook on e7. He eliminates one of the most important pieces in black's position. The knight on e7 held the pawn on d5 and also threatened to jump to f5. Black accepts the sacrifice and captures the rook on e7. He has no better option in this position. And the white bishop takes on d5. The white bishops are preserved. The black king steps forward, defending the bishop on a6, and rook e1 comes, bringing the second rook onto the e-file. In the resulting position, Janowski has 4 pieces in attack, 2 bishops, a rook, and the queen. Black, however, has only 3 in defense, and even those are placed far from optimal. And the bishop on c8, it covers only a couple of white squares on the king side. In this position, black needs to remove his queen from danger, and he decides to place it on c5, pinning white's bishop on d5 to the unprotected queen on h5. White's pieces start to get a bit tangled in this position. The bishop cannot move. The queen also cannot really retreat because the bishop on d5 is hanging. A decisive mating attack is also not visible, while black, in turn, is ready to bring his last inactive pieces into the game. The computer in this position suggests Janowski should play rook e8, the move that wins the game. But finding it is not so simple. It could have been that very winning move for him in this game. For example, if black had captured the rook on e8, then queen f7 check would follow, and after king h8, such a simple mate for white. If, on the other hand, black did not take the rook on e8, but for example played c6, trying to win the bishop on d5 because it is pinned to the queen, then there would have followed a mate in 7 moves. But of course, white still had to see all of that in this position. There follows a bishop sacrifice on f6, and after the capture with the king, queen takes on h6, the only retreat is king f5, then bishop e4, again the only move, king g4, bishop f3, an essential intermediate, and on the king's return, pawn g4 check. Almost mate to the black king. The only capture black has is once again to take with the pawn, then bishop e4, again only king g4, and mate with the pawn on h3. That would have been a forced mate in 7 moves. But all of that had to be calculated by white. Janowski in the game did not spot this line, and therefore did not play rook e8. Instead, rook e5, sacrificing the rook on e5. Taking this rook, of course, is impossible. Then bishop takes on e5 would follow, and mate in 3 moves. The black king has nowhere to run. On the only interposition with the rook, queen f7 check. Taking advantage of the fact that the rook is pinned to the king retreats once again to the only available square, h8, but then queen g8, mate. Thus, the game could have ended if black had taken this rook sacrifice on e5. Black plays queen f2, threatening mate in 1 against the white king with queen f1, but he overlooks mate from white. Whoever delivers mate faster is the winner. Rook g5 check, once again sacrificing the rook. Black can no longer avoid this sacrifice. After king h8, there would follow mate in 2 moves. Bishop takes on f6, deflection, and rook g8, enclosing the black king. But in the game, after this rook was taken, Janowski recaptures with the queen on g5. The pawn on f6 is pinned to the king, so the queen cannot be captured. The climax of the game arrives. Janowski sacrifices his queen on f6. Black captures this queen, and bishop f6, mate. Janowski sacrificed all his pieces except for 2 bishops, which deliver mate to the black king. Black has an extra rook and an extra queen. Plus, he was 1 step away from giving mate to the white king, but David Janowski was faster. Black should not have fallen for the provocation, but simply retreated with his queen to d6, consolidating his position. Instead, he went for a counterattack with his queen, threatening mate in 1. But he completely missed the mate from white. In that position, black really had no problems at all. The move rook g5 no longer posed any threat. Then black would capture, and after the queen recaptures, the king would simply retreat to f8. The pawn on f6 would be reliably protected by the black pieces. With only 2 bishops and the queen, Janowski would not have been able to checkmate the black king. If you like this video and this game, press like, subscribe to the channel, and also write in the comments if you have ever managed to checkmate with 2 bishops, whether it was in the endgame or as here in the middle game with a mating attack. Thank you for watching, support the channel, watch exclusive content, the link is in the description, and see you soon.